Yes, welcome back. Now we're going to be looking at the aviation sector, and we often look at that these days. The federal government on the 7th of April released the white paper on the report of the Presidential Committee on the Rationalization and Restructuring of Federal Government Parastatals, Commissions and Agencies. In the white paper, the federal government rejected most of the recommendations made by the committee, which was headed by the former head of the civil service, Mr. Steve Oronsaye. To look at this with us this morning, I'd like to welcome the National President of the Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Mr. Benjamin Okewu. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning,
And with him is a civil aviation lawyer, Mr. Ilitrus Amadu. Good morning. And thank you very much for coming. Now, the federal government accepted the recommendation to merge the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, and the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, into one body, which will be called the Federal Civil Aviation Authority. Now, let me start with you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
We want to assume that the NCAA is a policy-making body, and its job is not the same thing as NAMA, Airspace Management, and NIMET, which is prediction of weather and to tell airlines and aircraft whether they can fly or not. To your mind, can those three agencies work together as one agency?
My answer will be simply no. NCA, apart from providing policy that will guide the aviation industry,
It's
purely a regulator. NAMA is a service provider. NAMA provides navigational air services that will help an aircraft to take off from point A to point B to ensure that the aircrafts in the air are separated evenly so that there are no accidents. And NIMET on its own does not only provide their services for aviation alone. I'm aware that NIMET provides services for the maritime, construction, agriculture, the environment, and several other sectors of the economy. And just like we have said that NCAA as a regulator is still struggling with one or two political interferences, merging them with service provider will water the regulatory responsibility bestowed on NCAA. I cannot see myself as a regulator regulating my own services if I combine my responsibility to become a service provider. And we have said that just like all over the world, nations that peradventure have their regulatory agencies combined with one or two service providers in the aviation industry have been advised by ICAO. We have a very few of them. And you can tolerate them because of the number of airports, how small they are, and stuff like that. But Nigeria, we left that realm 20 years ago.
Oh, so we're thinking of going back.
So why would we be going back? How are we reinventing the way to take us back to where we left some 20 years ago?
Okay. Mr. Amadu, you're a lawyer. The laws that enable a regulator to operate and the laws that enable a service provider to operate, is there a way that you can merge those two laws so that they can now apply to all of them evenly when they have all been merged into one agency? Is that possible?
Well, I think like the president of ATSAN said, it's the merger as announced by the federal government has taken its, to say the least, has put the country in a very bad light before the international community, especially considering the fact that Nigeria is a member of the International Civil Aviation Organization. Nigeria has signed up to the Chicago Convention, has domesticated it in its laws as far back as 1962. Nigeria became a member of the Chicago Convention of Okewu. Now, Okewu is a system. It sets the standards and recommended practices for the conduct of civil aviation worldwide. And once you subscribe and you become a member, there's an obligation on you to submit yourself to conform with the standards, as it were. And beyond that, Okewu carries out oversight responsibility on all its member states. We have evolved between 1962 and now. We've gone a long way. Nigeria has gone through 2 major audits of the Okewu. It used to be a voluntary audit system, which Nigeria underwent sometime in 2003. But because of the global concerns to harmonize standards for safety worldwide, safety and security of civil aviation worldwide, Okewu now upgraded from the voluntary audit to a mandatory audit system, which Nigeria underwent in 2006. And prior to 2006, you would recall, there were several institutional reforms that led to the creation of the Civil Aviation Authority in 1999 under the regime of General Abdul Salam, that created the NCA distinct from NAMA and other service providers. Aviation is one of the most regulated industries in the world.
Understandably.
And the reason is not far-fetched, because it is necessary. Because whenever an accident happens in aviation, the fatality rate is high. So Okewu insists that states should have, there is a template. There is the manual of procedures for licensing, certification, and continuing surveillance of air operators that provides a structure of a state civil aviation regulatory system. It says member states should create independent CAAs and appoint a Director General who will promulgate regulations for the safety, promulgate and implement them for the safety of air navigation. So we have done that. By 2006, we subjected ourselves to the mandatory audit. And Okewu was satisfied because we came up with a legal framework that separated these entities. You need to have a separation because the regulatory agency has to focus on its business of regulating. The service providers have to focus on their business of service provision. Likewise, the Accident Investigation Bureau agency, the AIB in Nigeria, was created. Section 29 of the Civil Aviation Act created the AIB and made it an independent, autonomous body, separate, distinct from the regulatory authority, service providers, to focus on accident investigation. And you see how we have evolved over the years. And for us to come to the state we are today, it's, to say the least.
Are we in any way going against the agreement which we have signed with ICAO if we now revert to this position, this new position that we're about to adopt?
Certainly.
So
Certainly.
is ICAO going to do anything about it?
I will tell you something. You know, the ICAO, like I said, it's a system. It's got over 191 member states. The most recent member is South Sudan, Juba, South Sudan. Now, it's a system. Now, what ICAO does is that the mandatory audit system, before they upgraded to this mandatory audit, it was a voluntary, and they didn't have to publish the report of the audits. So they sign certain memoranda with states and they conduct the audits. But this time around, because it's mandatory, the reports of the audits will be published through a secured website, which all member states will access. The implication is that if they see that your aviation activity falls short of the recommended standards, there are implications. ICAO would not force Nigeria to do what it prescribed. However, ICAO expects Nigeria at this stage to do the right thing. Now, if other states that whose airlines fly into Nigeria and out, see that you have fallen short of the standards, what the message you are sending to them is that you are not doing it the way it ought to be.
And they may then decide to pull out of your
whether
country.
to continue or to pull out.